Today on the Matt Walsh Show, Democrats panic as Trump destroys their slush fund and money laundering operation. He's making good on his promise to drain the swamp, and the swamp is not happy about it. Also, trans activists rally to demand that hospitals continue castrating children. The governor of New Jersey appears to claim that he's breaking federal law by harboring fugitive aliens in his house. And photographs from the surface of Mars have led some to speculate that there may be remnants of an advanced civilization buried beneath the surface. Do I buy that theory? Well, of course I do. All of that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. I have some exciting news for our Daily Wire Plus members. We'll be bringing back the members-only segment of the show where I answer your questions this Thursday. If you're not a member, head to dailywire.com/subscribe to become one now and join in the fun. Do you wish that you could have invested in the stock market last year when investors scored the highest profits in decades, but between your mountain of bills and credit card debt, you had nothing left over? Well, it's time to stop letting debt hold you back. Let me tell you how Done With Debt can help. They have a brilliant new strategy designed to tackle your debt and put cash back in your pocket so you can save, invest, and build the life you've been wanting. Done With Debt negotiates directly with credit card and loan companies. Their team of negotiators and legal experts works to significantly reduce your bills, eliminate interest, and erase penalties. This frees up cash to invest while the stock market is strong. Done With Debt helps transform financial burden into opportunity, but since these strategies are time-sensitive, don't delay. Start building the life you deserve. Visit donewithdebt.com. Talk with one of their strategists. It's free. Just go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. As Twitter began to gain popularity around 15 years ago, millions of people in Cuba were looking for a similar website that they could use to send short messages to the world. It was difficult to access Twitter itself because Cuba's communist government restricted internet access, so there was a big untapped market there. Fortunately for Cubans, an alternative quickly emerged. It was called Zunzunil, which is a Cuban expression that's supposed to sound like the noise a hummingbird makes, I guess. So we had Twitter, and they had a knockoff called Zunzunio. But even though it was a pretty cheap knockoff, the application quickly became popular, gaining tens of thousands of users in a matter of months. The creators of the app had obtained a list of 500,000 Cuban cell phone numbers from somewhere, presumably the black market. So they were able to pitch the program directly to users. And cell phones were the key to the whole business model. Zunzunio was able to evade Cuba's internet restrictions because it relied entirely on text messaging and cellular services. And after just a couple of years in service, though, Zunzunio abruptly disappeared. It just went offline without any warning whatsoever. Nobody had any idea what had happened to it. It wasn't until several years later that we learned the truth because of an investigation that was published by the Associated Press. It turns out that Zunzunio was secretly created by the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. Yes, the U.S. government's International Development Agency had created a social media app in Cuba without telling anyone, in this country or in Cuba. In response to this reporting, the White House spokesman at the time claimed that it was all a big misunderstanding. Watch.
The U.S. has admitted to being behind a Twitter-style text messaging service in Cuba, but denies it was a covert operation to topple President Castro. The Associated Press news agency revealed that the U.S. aid agency funded Zunzunio, claiming it aimed to stir unrest, something the White House refuted.
Congress funds democracy programming for Cuba to help empower Cubans to access more information and to strengthen civil society. These appropriations are public, unlike covert action. The money invested has been debated in Congress.
So the White House spokesman, Jay Carney, was, whatever happened to that guy? The first 14-year-old to ever be appointed White House spokesperson. I don't know whatever happened to him in the preceding years, but he claims that everything's above board. After all, USAID is all about helping other countries, and we were just helping Cuba out. What's the problem? As it turns out, even if you assume that the U.S. should be helping out foreign countries by sending them taxpayer money, which we obviously shouldn't be doing, there are still major problems here, and here's a big one. According to the AP, quote, the estimated $1.6 million spent on Zunzunio was publicly earmarked for an unspecified project in Pakistan, but those documents don't reveal where the funds were actually spent. So in other words, this is what we call fraud. Congress authorized the money to go to Pakistan. The president signed an appropriations bill sending the money to Pakistan, and the money did not go to Pakistan. Not that we want any money going to Pakistan, by the way, but they said that's where it's going, but instead it went to Cuba. American voters were told the money was going to one place, but it went to another. And there's a very clear reason why USAID might have been interested in lying about where the money was going, which is this. The point of spending the money was not to develop Cuba. The point was to overthrow Cuba's government. Quoting again from the AP, USAID and its contractors went to extensive lengths to conceal Washington's ties to the project, according to interviews and documents obtained by the AP. They set up front companies in Spain and the Cayman Islands to hide the money trail and recruited CEOs without telling them they'd be working on a U.S. taxpayer-funded project. Eventually, they hoped the network would reach critical mass so that dissidents could organize smart mobs, mass gatherings called at a moment's notice, that could trigger political demonstrations or renegotiate the balance of power between the state and society. Now, reading that, you can't help but think that, think about all the smart mobs that the government has probably worked to organize in this country. This is clearly what our intelligence agencies are good at. They launder money with the goal of overthrowing governments with color revolutions all the time, whether it's in Ukraine or Cuba or dozens of other places. But you're supposed to think that they would never do the same thing here. They would never say, stoke racial tensions so that half the country is lit on fire in the name of racial equity. Now, in this particular case, the U.S. government got caught, and that led to some embarrassment among Democrats. For example, one prominent Democrat, Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont, asked USAID, quote, what in heaven's name are you thinking? If you're going to do a covert operation like this for a regime change, assuming it ever makes any sense, it's not something that should be done through USAID. So he gave them a finger wagging, and that was it. Nothing else happened. USAID suffered no consequences whatsoever. I bring all this up because it's one of many egregious examples of how USAID has been operating with total impunity over the past several decades. This is an agency that JFK created by executive order during the Cold War to allegedly help fight the spread of communism. And then Congress formally established USAID with a law called the Foreign Assistance Act. And ever since then, the agency has steadily grown and spent more and more taxpayer money overseas. Like all government programs, it has simply consumed more and more resources over time, like cancer, with no sign of ever going away. There is no accountability for any of this spending ever. This is Enron-level accounting, and we've been tolerating it for decades. If Americans knew what was happening, they would overwhelmingly oppose all of it. So take a look at this chart to give you just one more example. This is from USAID's website, and it was first flagged by somebody named Jeff Carlson. You can look at the image on the screen. As you can see, as of September 2024, USAID has already spent most of the $39 billion it has been allocated for Ukraine. Supposedly, this is not military assistance, because after all, USAID is about international development, supposedly. By contrast, the Defense Department was allocated something like $124 billion for Ukraine, and they spent around $49 billion of it. In other words, if you thought that Pentagon spending accounted for the vast majority of our spending in Ukraine, you're wrong. As it turns out, USAID is doing a lot of work in Ukraine. And the truth is, we have no idea what they're doing there. Supposedly, the money is going to an economic support fund to pay the pensions and salaries of Ukrainian government bureaucrats. That's the stated reason, which is bad enough. Okay, like giving money to Ukrainian bureaucrats, our tax money, the money that comes out of our paychecks going to government officials in Ukraine is bad enough. It's very, very bad. But almost certainly they're also laundering a lot of money to promote propaganda for the war effort there. The level of fraud that's going on here is just hard to comprehend. Just imagine auditing a $39 billion economic support fund for Ukraine. But there are no line items, so you can only imagine it. I mean, it's impossible to actually audit it. Again, this has been going on for a very long time. As far back as 2017, Congressman Francis Rooney pointed out that USAID was subsidizing the World Economic Forum for no apparent reason. Check it out.
And there are so many abuses of AID. I found out that AID has given money to support the World Economic Forum. Why would the United States taxpayer be subsidizing the World Economic Forum when everybody that arrives over there arrives in a Gulfstream G5?
Yes, we are paying globalist billionaires with your tax money. You never voted for that. Congress never authorized it, but it happened. And no one ever put an end to this slush fund, so it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger. The other day, the White House press secretary outlined a small percentage of where some of this USAID money is going today. Watch.
Karen.
Do you know if Mr. Musk took the same oath that you and other senior advisors to the president took about adhering to the Constitution, following the law? Do you know if he took that oath?
I don't know the answer to that question, but like I told Caitlin, I can get back to you guys on that.
And do you know what expertise he has in the areas of global health or humanitarian aid to be able to assess what's happening at USAID?
Well, first of all, Elon Musk is a once-in-a-generation business leader. He is an entrepreneur. He serves as a great ally and a friend to the president. And I think Elon Musk also has a little bit of common sense. And I think the American people really appreciate that when it comes to the federal government, because it seems like all common sense has been lost in this city. And that's what you see when you look at USAID. I know Secretary Rubio made some comments about how he will be acting as the director over that agency. And here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been taking a look. Because if you look at the waste and abuse that has run through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government.
As bad as all of those line items sound, and they obviously sound really bad and are really bad, the truth is that it's probably much worse than that. It's the federal government that's saying they're spending your money to make gay comics in Peru. It's the federal government that's saying they dropped $70,000 to promote DEI in Irish theaters. That's what they're claiming. And as we've established, they have no problem lying about all this. So the chances are pretty high that in reality, all this money actually went to coup attempts that you know nothing about and that you will never know anything about. In a previous era, this is what we would call a constitutional crisis. A federal agency has gone rogue. They are spending money that Congress and the voters have not authorized them to spend. And on top of that, none of this is a good idea anyway, since we're the only country on the planet that routinely dishes out huge amounts of money like this to foreign governments. We shouldn't be giving a single penny of American tax dollars to any foreign government anywhere, but we're doing a lot more than that. So now, finally, the Trump administration is putting an end to it. The USAID website was just taken offline. USAID workers weren't allowed in the building yesterday, and Trump and Elon Musk have agreed that the agency should be shut down. In response, Democrats are panicking over this in a way that they haven't panicked over anything else Trump has done. I mean, they panic about everything, but this is several levels beyond what we've seen from them so far. They are extremely animated and upset about the collapse of an agency that funnels money overseas without accounting for any of the spending. So it's almost as if they benefited in some way from this spending. Here, for example, is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who claims that this moment is the official beginning of Trump's dictatorship. Yes, we're currently living in the first dictatorship in history that began with a popular vote victory and that will end 4 years later at the conclusion of the term, as prescribed in the Constitution. That's the kind of dictatorship this is. Watch her explain.
It is really, really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made. What Trump and Elon and all of their cronies are trying to do is take away the constitutional power of Congress. We get to decide. We have the power of the purse.
Now, if you get past all the hysteria, the point she's trying to make is that USAID was established by Congress, and therefore only Congress can get rid of the agency. And until that happens, if the president doesn't want to send billions of taxpayer dollars overseas, then he's a dictator. That's what she's saying. But on the contrary, this is, of course, the exact opposite of a dictatorship. Trump ran on certain promises and is now delivering to the voters precisely what they asked for. One of those promises from the very beginning has been to cut waste, root out corruption, and drain the swamp. It's pretty clear that Trump is doing all three of those things through this assault on USAID. Trump, as the executive, doesn't have to waste our money, even if Congress has authorized him to do so. Even Democrats agree with this, by the way. You might remember that Democrats once argued that Barack Obama didn't have to enforce immigration law, even though it was passed by Congress. To the extent anyone was acting like a dictator in this scenario, it was the unelected bureaucrats at USAID. No one voted for them. No one even knows their names. They routinely lied about where your money was going. They spent money without congressional authorization in order to overthrow foreign governments, which is criminal for about 5 different reasons. Even Democrats have admitted that. None of that sounds particularly democratic, and yet no one in the Democrat Party ever objected to it. The real reason Democrats are freaking out is pretty obvious. Trump is tearing their money laundering operation to pieces. Their slush fund is being drained. You might remember that Ilhan Omar previously stated, according to a translation of her remarks that was obtained by the Daily Wire, that as long as she's in office, quote, Somalia will never be in danger. She also said she would work, quote, day and night to preserve the interests of Somalis in the United States. And part of that work, we can assume, means ensuring that billions of dollars in U.S. aid continues flowing into Somalia so that Somalia can, as it has always done, squander all of it, and the country can continue to be a hellhole, which it has always been and always will be. This is the kind of corrupt arrangement that USAID has established for many politicians in many different contexts, and that's what Ilhan Omar is actually upset about. And that would certainly explain why, seemingly out of nowhere, Democrats are taking to the streets in defense of USAID. They had a whole parade of speakers outside the agency headquarters yesterday. Here was Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Elon Musk, you didn't create U.S. aid. The United States Congress did for the American people. And just like Elon Musk did not create U.S. aid, he doesn't have the power to destroy it. And who's going to stop him? We are. We're going to stop him. And just like the president who is elected to something cannot impound the money of the people, we don't have a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk. And that's going to become real clear.
So he begins by saying that Elon didn't create USAID as if that's a damning point in some way. We're supposed to be outraged that Elon Musk did not create a massive and unaccountable government bureaucracy that lights money on fire. Congress did that. So thank you for establishing that, Jamie Raskin. You're exactly right. Congress. Only an idea that stupid could come from Congress. And then things descend into self-parody when he talks about Elon Musk and Donald Trump impounding taxpayer money as if they're stealing it. No, what they are doing is precisely not stealing it. They are refusing to steal it. No, they're saving taxpayer money from being wasted on foreign countries. They're not stealing it, they're preserving it. They're keeping it within the United States. Okay, that's like if there was a bonfire and you handed them a bag of cash and said, throw it in the fire, and they refused to throw it in the fire, and then you accuse them of stealing it for not burning it. I mean, that's what they're doing. And this is what voters, again, overwhelmingly want. They want their money to be saved, obviously. And any Democrat who claims this is somehow unconstitutional needs to explain why they allowed U.S. aid to unconstitutionally steal our money for the better part of a century. The Democrats know they have no explanation for this, which is why they're in a full-on panic as they attempt to convince Americans that USAID, an entity that most Americans didn't even know existed until 24 hours ago, is somehow vital to their daily lives. Here is the Democrats' leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and I want you to listen to his concerns about what might be coming next.
Also know this is just the beginning. If DOJ attacks USAID today, then you can be sure they'll move on to another target tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe it'll be the Postal Service or the IRS or even the Social Security Administration. They could be next. Or maybe our national security agencies.
Yeah, the horror. I mean, just imagine. He's going to get rid of the IRS. Guys, we got to put a stop to this before he gets rid of the IRS. First he does this, next he gets rid of the IRS. Next thing you know, he's giving free beer and puppy dogs to everybody. So it's going to be a horror show. So as far as I can tell, Chuck Schumer meant for this soundbite to seem menacing. He meant for Americans to tremble in fear at the possibility that the IRS might cease to exist. One day, Schumer has warned, you may be able to go about your life without worrying about whether the IRS will suspend all of your constitutional rights under the guise of an audit and attempt to squeeze just a little more money out of you so that the federal government can waste it on gay plays in Peru or whatever. Can you even comprehend the horror? Now, there will be legal challenges to the closure of USAID. Democrats will continue to lie about this organization and what it does. They'll do everything they can to make you afraid of something that should have happened a long time ago. And that's because they're the ones who are terrified. They're not even doing a very good job of hiding it. They understand that finally, they're going to have to account for the taxpayer money, your money, that they've been spending. And the more Democrats melt down, the more it becomes apparent that they have no way of doing that. Doge has gone from a meme to an existential threat to entrenched government corruption. And now, much more rapidly than we thought possible, that corruption is finally being exposed and humiliated and thoroughly destroyed. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Securing your family's future is of utmost importance in today's world. As someone who's always advocated for smart financial planning, I can tell you that having the right life insurance coverage isn't just about peace of mind. It's about giving your family options if the unexpected occurs. That's why I want to tell you about Policy Genius. They're not an insurance company themselves, but they are the country's leading online insurance marketplace. They let you compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side, completely free with absolutely no hidden fees. Their platform uses real licensed insurance experts who work for you, not the insurance companies, so you can find the best fit for your family. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. The process is fast and simple. Their licensed support team handles everything, answering your questions, managing paperwork, and advocating for you throughout the entire process. Don't just take my word for it. Thousands of satisfied customers have left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. No matter what stage of life you're in, Policy Genius helps you find the perfect coverage for your specific situation. Secure your families tomorrow so you have peace of mind today. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. New York Post reports New York Attorney General Letitia James warned local hospitals Monday that they'll be in violation of state discrimination laws if they comply with President Trump's executive order aimed at outlawing sex change procedures for minors. Regardless of the availability of federal funding, we write to further remind you of your obligations to comply with New York state laws, including those that prohibit discrimination against individuals based on their membership in a protected class such as sex, gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, race, creed, color, national origin, citizenship, or immigration status, blah, blah, blah. Electing to refuse services to a class of individuals based on their protected status, such as withholding the availability of services from transgender individuals based on their gender identity or their diagnosis of gender dysphoria, is discrimination under New York law. And her letter comes as several hospitals across the country have already taken steps to cut back on so-called gender-affirming care, quote unquote, in an apparent effort to comply with Trump's January 28th executive order protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. The White House also pointed to the New York City's NYU Langone Health, which has reportedly started canceling appointments for minors seeking transgender procedures. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside the hospital last night, and we have some clips from this protest, just a couple of clips. Here's one from a trans-identified man it's addressing the crowd. Listen.
Shut this entire city down! Not on our watch. Because what they will try to do, they will try to separate us. They will kick the trans people off the bus. They're kicking the indigenous people off the bus. They're kicking our intersex community off the bus. Our two-sphere plus family, they're kicking them off the bus. They just want a membership LGBT bus. Well, guess what, babe? That LGBT bus, it's not going to have any gas. It won't have any tires. Y'all not going any far. Because we are a community that is made and has been woven with the fire and the spirit of revolution. Revolution! Revolution! So the people that are not here with us, we will take note. It's not that cold.
Says they're kicking the trans people off the bus. They're kicking the non-binary off the bus. They're kicking the two-spirit plus off the bus. That sounds like a nice bus ride to me. I mean, it was sounds like a pleasant bus ride through the countryside at this point. But screaming that they're going to shut the city down. They did not shut the city down. I can tell you that the city continued on functioning as normal. And just to make sure we're very clear about this, all of these adults are outside in the cold at night protesting to demand that children are sterilized and castrated. I mean, just so we're clear about what they're protesting. Trump did not sign an order banning men from dressing up like women or whatever. This is specifically to stop young children from being given life-altering drugs that can damage their bodies forever. That's what this is about. That's what they're protesting. They're protesting not against that, but for it, of course. And I think this little speech from, I think this is a Sex and the City actress, I'm pretty sure, and she has a quote-unquote trans kid. There's a couple of things she says in this short little clip that are notable. Listen.
Most importantly, I am here today as the mother of a proud trans man. I am here today as the aunt of a proud trans man. My best friend's kid is trans, and my kid's best friend is trans. My wife and I, our lives are filled with the most amazing, beautiful, brave trans people, young and old, but especially young. My trans kid had his top surgery at NYU a number of years ago.
Okay, so her kid is quote-unquote trans. Her niece is trans. Her best friend's kid is trans. Her kid's best friend is trans. All the kids in her life are trans, apparently. So she is confirming beyond any doubt, if you had any doubt, that it's a social contagion. She has just basically mathematically proved it. She didn't mean to do that, but she has offered mathematical proof that this is a social contagion. Because if we look at trans as a naturally occurring phenomenon, which it isn't, but if we looked at it that way, which is how they would look at it, well, then naturally the chances of it occurring are like 1 in a few thousand. Okay, it depends on how you get, but one in 1,000, one in, or even more rare than that. Let's just say 1 in 1,000, just to be, just to be as generous as possible. So the chances then of having a trans kid, a trans niece, and being surrounded by a bunch of other trans kids, those chances statistically are like 1 in several billion. And that's if we look at it as a natural phenomenon. You have a scenario here that as a natural phenomenon is essentially mathematically impossible. But if we look at it as it is, as a social contagion, well, then actually it makes a ton of sense. The chance of having other trans kids around once you have one trans kid are quite high. Now, if it's a naturally occurring phenomenon, the existence of one trans kid in a group should not increase the possibility of other kids in that group being trans. But if it's a social contagion, then the chances are, once you have one trans kid in a group, the chance that another kid identifies as trans is not 1 in 1,000, but the odds are much better than that, or much worse, depending on how you look at it. Because it spreads. It's an idea, it's a contagion, it spreads. It's an idea that catches on. Other kids are influenced. And that's what this woman, whose name I can't remember, Cynthia Nixon, right? Isn't that who she is? Cynthia Nixon, that's what she is admitting, unintentionally. And I want to point one other thing out, because she says that her daughter had quote unquote top surgery a number of years ago. It's not clear if she had her daughter's breast removed when the daughter was still a child, but it seems highly likely that she did. She seems to be implying that. But either way, her daughter's breasts were chopped off with her, the mother's blessings and presumably encouragement. And so this is what you have to keep in mind, that people like this woman, Cynthia Nixon, people like Cynthia, they can't let this go. They can't give up on this fight. They have to defend trans ideology to the hilt forever. Because the other option is to admit that they've done something horrific to their children, which they can't do. That's the situation that they're in. So, when you hear these people say, and they get quite hysterical and talk about how they're fighting for their lives and their lives are on the line. And it's easy for us to listen to that and say, well, this is hysterical. To call it a gross exaggeration would be a massive understatement. And that's true. Like, in the way that they mean it on the surface, it's hysterical to say that their lives are on the line. But at a deeper level, in a sense, it's true, because what I think they actually mean, and they don't know that they mean this, I think it's subconscious, but what they actually mean is that they won't be able to live with themselves if they're wrong. So if, say, Cynthia Nixon says, fighting for our lives, life is on the line, life and death struggle, uses any language like that, what she's actually saying is that I, as a mother, could not live with myself if I had to admit that I mutilated and destroyed my daughter's body. I couldn't live with that as a mother. I can't look at myself in the mirror and live every day for the rest of my life knowing that I have physically abused my child in the most grotesque manner possible. That's what they're really saying. Because most people, to admit that you're wrong about anything is difficult, and most people just, in general, it's rare to find a person who's willing to admit that they're wrong about anything ever. But to admit that you're wrong when in a situation like this, when being wrong means that you have made a mistake that has permanently altered your life or the life of someone you love, irrevocably. Well, to admit that takes immense honesty and moral courage, which we know. There are plenty of detrans people out there, Chloe Cole and others who will talk about this. And of course, in their case, someone like Chloe Cole, it's not that she made a mistake, it's that because she was a child, it's her parents and the doctors that did the horrible thing. But either way, there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, most people just lack the honesty to look at something like this and say, you know what, I got this wrong. And I got it horrifically wrong. And I can never make it right. And so I think that's what's happening here. All right, the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, has announced that he will not cooperate with Trump's deportation plans. Watch.
I want to speak directly to people who are undocumented. We love you. We care about you. In the city of Minneapolis, we will stand up for you, and we will do anything in our power to help. Because you're not an alien in our city, you're a neighbor. Now, in Minneapolis, we have what is called a separation ordinance. And that separation ordinance states clearly that our city officials, our police officers and beyond, will not be gathering information showing who is and who is not documented. We do not ask the question with regard to immigration status, and because we haven't asked the question, we don't have any data to show documentation status in our city. Our police officers will not be cooperating with federal law enforcement around federal immigration law. We enforce state and local laws here in Minneapolis, and we will do so to the best of our ability. But as for cooperation with ICE, the answer is no.
Well, first of all, he doesn't enforce state or local law either. I mean, this little weasel, you may recall, allowed Minneapolis to burn during the Floyd riots. In fact, he went and wept before George Floyd's golden casket while his city was burning. So he doesn't really enforce any laws at all. Nothing new here. Second, mayors who announce that they're going to interfere with and not comply with federal law, mayors who declare their intention to take illegal measures in the name of undermining our national sovereignty should be arrested. I mean, I would arrest them and send them to Gitmo. We're already going to be using Gitmo for illegal aliens. Send these mayors with them. You like illegal aliens so much, Mayor Fry. Well, go stay in a cell in Gitmo with them if you like them so much. And I'm not even joking. I mean, these mayors are terrorists. They are national security threats, and they should be treated like it. Our national sovereignty is a national security issue. He is directly interfering. He is trying to destabilize our country. He's directly trying to make our country and his own community less safe. He's breaking the law. So lock his ass up. Lock him up in Gitmo. Now, if that doesn't happen, which I'm guessing it won't, at the very least, the Trump administration has every right to prosecute these criminal mayors. And Tom Homan has already said that he will. In fact, Tom Homan has responded to Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, who went a step further than most of the other government officials who have pledged to not cooperate with federal law, in that Murphy seems to indicate that he is personally harboring an illegal alien in his house. Listen to this.
I don't want to get into too much detail, but there's someone in our broader universe whose immigration status is not yet at the point that they are trying to get it to. And we said, you know what, let's have her live at our house above our garage. And good luck to the feds coming in to try to get her.
I got note of it. Won't let it go. We'll look into it. And if he's knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien, that's a violation of Title 8 United States Code 1324. I would seek prosecution, or the Secretary would seek prosecution. So maybe he's bluffing. If he's not, we'll deal with that.
So there you have Phil Murphy, and then Tom Homan responding, saying we're going to seek prosecution, which of course he should. Interesting euphemism from Phil Murphy, who says of the illegal alien, her immigration status isn't yet to the point that she's trying to get it to, or whatever. In other words, she's an illegal alien. And then Governor Murphy says, good luck to the feds trying to come in, which we can only interpret as a violent threat against law enforcement. Because what else could that mean? What do you mean, good luck getting in? What are you trying to say? What else would you mean? Why would you imply that they would have trouble somehow detaining this illegal criminal? You're saying that federal law enforcement officers would have trouble enforcing federal law in your house? What kind of trouble, Phil, are you talking about? But of course, by the way, if the federal government wants to get her out of your basement, they're getting her out. Okay, I don't know what it is you think you're going to do, but they won't have a lot of trouble doing it. And there's a lot of this going on right now. In particular, this idea of like personally hiding illegal aliens, stashing them in your attic or in the basement. There's a lot of leftists that are pledging to defy federal law in this way. It's not only stupid and criminal, but also very creepy. I mean, very creepy. So, for example, listen to this TikToker and as she explains her plan.
All right. ICE is doing whatever the Orange Tyrant is telling them to do. They're, invading schools, churches, hospitals. Nothing's off limits. Listen, I live right next to an elementary school. My house has been used to harbor escaping black slaves. My house was part of the Underground Railroad, and I will not hesitate to hide those kids in my basement to keep them safe, to get them back to their families. And you're telling me that I will not hesitate to barricade my doors to protect those kids. And I'll hide their parents. I don't know if my tunnels are still connected because there's houses all down the street that have tunnels hidden in them. I will hide those kids to protect those kids and their families. Trump.
So just kind of a pro tip here, but just a bit of advice. Don't ever announce publicly that you want to take kids from your local elementary school and lock them in your basement and then barricade the door. That's not... Don't announce it. More importantly, don't do it. Unless your goal is to come off like a serial killer. How are you going to get these kids in your basement? What's the plan? You're gonna drive by the school in a van and offer them candy? Get them into your basement? Like, what's the plan here? So this woman needs to be on a watch list, to say the least. And also, not that I'm trying to give any pointers here, but if you are planning on doing this, why are you announcing it? Whether it's Phil Murphy or any of these creepy, weird liberals that are saying they're gonna start announcing their plans to start an illegal alien collection in their homes, hiding under the floorboards. Even if you were going to do that, like she's comparing it to the Underground Railroad. Okay, well, but this is not how the Underground Railroad worked, okay? Like Harriet Tubman wasn't going around in the South openly announcing to everyone, hey, I got an Underground Railroad. What are you going to do about it? I'll tell you exactly where it is. What are you going to do? I dare you. I dare you to try to stop me. Well, they could stop you like pretty easily. So the secrecy element is really an essential part. That's why they called it the Underground Railroad. Did you know that? It's not because it was literally underground for the most part. I mean, there were some tunnels and things involved, but like underground mostly meant hidden, secret is what that meant. So you're missing the secrecy part. But I'm quite happy that someone like this is announcing their plans publicly, because this is something that local authorities can now be aware of, and this is a woman who should not be allowed to anywhere near elementary schools, pretty clearly. Okay, I want to briefly mention this before we get to the comment section. SpaceX CEO Elon Musk has backed a mission to Mars to investigate the remarkable square structure that was captured on NASA's Mars Orbiter camera. The image, which has gone viral after being shared on Reddit, appears to show a possible archaeological site on the red planet. Joe Rogan posted it, branding it as effing wild. Musk responded saying we should send astronauts to Mars to investigate. And so the square structure, which, do we have it? Let's put it up on the screen. So there it is. You see the image, and then there's the enhanced image there. And it looks indeed very square. And it is a lot bigger than, without any kind of reference point, without anything to compare it to. It's hard to tell the size of it. But this is estimated to be about 770 feet on either side. So, at the base, approximately the size of the Great Pyramid in Egypt is how big it is. So it's pretty fascinating. And look, if you've ruled out the possibility of alien life existing anywhere in the universe at any point, then this is not going to be interesting to you. I think a lot of very interesting things are not interesting to you if you have just ruled out, in principle, the possibility of the interesting thing happening. But if you've taken a rational position and are open to it, then there's nothing outlandish about at least wondering whether this apparent structure, which is, exact geometric squares don't happen very often in nature. So there's nothing outlandish about wondering whether this might be the remnants of some sort of civilization. There's a lot of compelling evidence and very good reason to believe that Mars once had a lot of water and a mild, hospitable climate. And keep in mind that we've only known Mars as a desolate wasteland, but we've also only known Mars for a very short period of time. The first picture of Mars was taken in the 60s, I believe. Telescopes were invented in the 17th century. So we're talking about just a blink of an eye in cosmic terms. We might as well have just discovered Mars 10 seconds ago. Like, that's how long we've known of it, and or have been at least been able to astronomers, even in ancient times, were able to pinpoint in the sky, but at least being able to actually see it up close, it's been a blink of an eye. So if Mars had life on it, the life could have gone extinct millions or even billions of years ago, which would mean that we wouldn't be able to confirm evidence of it without actually going to the planet physically, landing a person there, like Elon Musk suggests, and looking under the surface of the planet. And even then, we might never be able to find the remnants. The oldest ruins on Earth, the oldest evidence of human life on this planet, at least of advanced human civilizations, are, just a few thousand years old. But so fast forward 50 million years, are those remnants still going to be there? Probably not. So all that to say, we don't know what existed on Mars millions of years ago. There could have been life. There could have been a civilization as advanced as our own. It is possible. I think it's fascinating to ponder the possibilities. And anyone who said otherwise is just wrong. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the Sweet Baby Gang.
Let's talk about something that affects all of us, those of us who are responsible, hardworking Americans anyway, taxes. Now that it's the new year and tax season is upon us, are you prepared for what's coming? Do you owe back taxes or your tax returns still unfiled? Missed the deadline to file for an extension? With the new year beginning and heading into a busy tax season, the IRS may be ramping up enforcement. Let me tell you, they're not playing around. You could face wage garnishments, frozen bank accounts, or even property seizures if you haven't taken action just yet. But here's the good news. There's still hope. Tax Network USA has been in the game for years, and they know exactly how to navigate the complex world of tax law. They've helped taxpayers save over $1 billion in tax debt and have filed over 10,000 tax returns. That's $1 billion with a B, folks. They specialize in helping hardworking Americans like you reduce their tax burdens. Look, I get it. Dealing with the IRS is about as fun as a root canal, but ignoring the problem will not make it go away. So here's what you got to do. For a complimentary consultation, call today at 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Walsh. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Walsh today. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. I had never heard this guy speak without knowledge about a topic until today. He's talking about Panama and their canal. I'm sorry, Matt, you can't just take the canal. The treaty was signed. It's not our problem that a moron as Carter signed it off to the Panamanians. Panama is a small country, but it's a great country, minding their own business, not messing with anyone. Why does your crazy president want to come here and claim something that's not his just because a couple of decades ago the U.S. paid to build the canal in Panamanian land? It was not a couple decades. It was like 100 years, more than 100 years ago. But anyway, your loss, buddy. The Panama Canal is Panama's canal, whether you like it or not, and will remain like that. Besides, and more importantly, the administration of the canal has been under the Panamanians. They've paid for their maintenance and carried all the issues that have come with it. And I haven't seen the U.S. offering their help. Please inform yourself on this topic, because you did stutter a lot on that, with your only argument being USA built it. Ignorance. Hey, look, I don't begrudge you. I don't begrudge this response from you as someone in Panama, as a Panamanian. I don't begrudge you calling Panama a great country. You should think that your country is great. I don't see it as like. I don't see that. I think now, from your subjectively as as someone who lives in the country, you think it's a great country. I think objectively, it's hard to make the argument that Panama stands out as one of the great countries in the world. I'd have to ask, like, in what way? By what measure are we calling it great? But the fact that you think that about your country is fine. You should think your country is great if you live there. And yeah, you should probably be offended by the way that I was talking about the issue. That's fine. I get it. In fact, I encourage it, because I want people to love their own countries and even be a chauvinist about your own country. I think that's all. I think that's good. I think it's good to feel that way. No hard feelings. But I'm American, and I love America. So the fact that the canal was built not just with American money, but with American blood and a lot of it, that means something to me. Now, it might not mean anything to you. I understand it means nothing to you. So you could just wave it away and say, just because you built it. Well, yeah, because we built it. This country built it. Bud, you understand that? There wouldn't be any canal if it was left up to the Panamanians. Sorry. You weren't building the canal. The canal wouldn't exist without America. In fact, if it was left up to any other country on the planet, it wouldn't have happened. And we know that because other countries tried to do it and couldn't. It was not the first time or the last in world history when other countries attempted to do something and Americans had to show up and say, all right, get out of the way, we'll do it. This happened many times, and this is one of the great examples of it. It's not easy. A lot of American lives were spent. A lot of Americans died in the process. And so, yes, that means, as an American, that means something to me. So you have a canal that Americans built, Americans paid for, Americans died for, and, as I said yesterday, a canal that America uses the vast majority of the time. 70% of the traffic through the canal is coming to or going from America. So yeah, it's our canal. I mean, by any reasonable metric, it's our canal. The only way that it's not, it is just Jimmy. If not for Jimmy Carter, if not for the worst president in American history, who may end up going down as second worst behind Joe Biden, but still, that takes more time. You need more historical perspective. So right now, Jimmy Carter is still the worst president in American history, and one of the worst Americans, period, to have ever lived. Aside from him, if not for him, right? It's still America's property. And like I said yesterday, you can say, well, sign on the dotted line is what it is. Sorry. Well, there were a lot of obligations that Panama took on according to that treaty. And I know, I'm quite sure the Trump administration has all the best lawyers in America looking at that thing right now, that treaty, and finding about 50,000 different ways that Panama has violated it. I'm sure they went looking for those, and I'm sure they found them. So what then? What happens you're basing this all on just who signed on the dotted line? Well, what happens when Trump looks at it and says, well, hey, yeah, but this treaty was contingent legally on this, that, and this didn't happen? Are you then going to say, okay, well, hey, it's the law, it's what the treaty, we'll give up the canal? No, what you'll probably say then is, well, I don't care what the treaty says. This is on our property. This is on our land. You're not going to take it. Then we're going to be in a situation where apparently what was written down is being discarded. And so now what determines who gets to have the canal? See, now we're in like a kind of dog-eat-dog scenario. And then it kind of comes down to to have this attitude of, well, that's our canal. You can't do anything about it. Well, yeah, but, America can. I mean, the United States could just take it. So, and there's literally nothing you could do about it at all. But, I certainly would hope that it wouldn't come to that. That's my hope anyway. Never would have taken Matt for a guy who enjoys guacamole. Can't explain why. Just get that vibe. Well, not only do I enjoy guacamole, but I make excellent guacamole. So I'm offended by that. I don't know where you're coming from with that, but I'm one of the great guacamole makers in America. So there's some news for you. I suggest a new segment on your show, Everything You Need to Know About Onesies with Matt Walsh. That might get a little repetitive, but a different segment where I whine about some really small thing related to parenting. That could be an idea. I mean, I already do that all the time, but that could be its own segment because there are so many things. I mean, I could do 45 minutes right now on the fact that like 90% of the toys on the market for toddlers make noise? Right? Every parent on earth has complained about this. We could all complain about it for hours, and we have. But it really is insane when you think about it. Because every parent alive hates this. They hate the toys that make noise. No parent likes this. Right? No parent has ever, it's like Christmas and someone buys your 3-year-old a toy and it makes some loud blaring noise that sounds like an air horn. No parent has ever said, oh, great, wonderful. I needed more noisy in this house. I'm so glad. Thank you. Like you never turned to, the aunt who gave that gift and said, thank you so much for that. That's what I was hoping. I was hoping there'd be some more loud crap. That's what we needed, was just more noise. No parent has ever said that, except dripping with sarcasm and contempt. So we all hate them, and yet every toy for a child makes noise. But here's the point: every parent hates it. Every parent. Kids don't need the toys to make noise. They'll have just as much fun with the toys if it doesn't make noise, because they can make the noise in their imagination and out loud. Kids, so they can handle that. So if you just give a kid like a plastic toy truck and it doesn't make noise, the child is not going to be upset saying it won't make noise. The child's not going to say that. The child only becomes upset when a toy doesn't make noise if it is supposed to make noise, or if it used to make noise and it doesn't anymore. But if you just give them the toy, so what I'm saying is, if we just had a federal law banning all toys for children under the age of 10 that make noise. Let's just say we had that federal law. I think we should at least think about it. And if we had that, it would not, the children would be fine with it if they were never given another toy that makes it, because they don't need it. So what's the point? Why does every toy maker do this? That's what I need to understand. Kids don't need it. Every parent hates it. And yet 95% of the toys on the market for kids under the age of 10 make noise. I don't get it. But anyway, that's a whole thing. That's a whole thing. We could talk about it. We could continue talking about that. And maybe we will. It's February, which means the usual crowd is claiming we don't do anything for Black History Month, which is, let's be honest, complete nonsense. We literally have the #1 documentary of the decade covering race in America. It's called Am I Racist? It was the surprise box office hit of the year, and here's a shocker. It's not the narrative the left wanted. And now, exclusively on Daily Wire Plus, we're pulling back the curtain with the making of Am I Racist, where Matt Walsh, that's me, that's who I am, director Justin Folk, and the team show how it all came together. Watch it right now at dailywire.com. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. We talked last week about RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing, which gave me another chance to stand on what is, to my audience, a very familiar soapbox. I made the case, as I have so many times in the past, that the greatest big pharma scandal is not the COVID vaccine, though that is a huge scandal, or how big pharma has contributed to the opioid epidemic by getting thousands of Americans hooked on painkillers, though again, a major scandal. It is the fact that they have used misinformation and outright lies and fabrications to convince millions of otherwise healthy people to take highly potent psychotropic drugs. Working with the psychiatric industry, big pharma has, over time, medicalized the entire human condition, every thought, emotion, feeling, prescribed a drug to treat it, as though a feeling or thought or mental disposition is automatically diseased just because it happens to be unpleasant or inconvenient. The invention of ADHD and the mass prescribing of amphetamines to children in an effort to treat this completely contrived disease is the worst example of this. And I've made the case against ADHD as a medical diagnosis many times. I won't repeat the whole rant here. You can check my YouTube channel to find many different versions of my anti-ADHD soliloquy. If you listen to the case that I make, and that plenty of other skeptics have made over the years, you'll understand that we are not denying the existence of what psychiatrists would call ADHD symptoms. ADHD is not a discrete disease like liver cancer. It is a description of a set of behaviors. And there's no doubt that those behaviors are real. Yes, many children, especially boys, exhibit them. What we deny is that those behaviors are inherently disordered, that they are an indication of an illness, and that they should be eradicated through the use of psychotropic drugs. That is our point. And there's more to be said on that general point. I've said it again many times. So instead today, what I'd like to do is share one specific thought related to this topic. It's been on my mind after reading a message from a parent who insisted that although they agreed generally with my point about Big Pharma and even my point about ADHD, they had no choice but to put their own 7-year-old son on ADHD drugs because his behavior was so wild and so disruptive, and he struggled so much in school. They, quote, tried everything before resorting to medication, they claim. And that is a refrain that I have heard countless times. I cannot tell you the number of conversations I've had with and emails I've read from parents who claim that they went the medication route as a last resort after, quote unquote, trying everything. But here's my problem with parents who say they tried everything before putting their children on drugs. My problem is that it isn't true. It can't be true. How could you have tried everything? The child is 7 years old. Even if he's 8 or 9 or 10 or 12, there's no way that you tried everything. If your child's been diagnosed with ADHD or you suspect that he has this artificial illness, consider this before you claim that you've arrived at your last resort. Have you tried drastically reducing his screen time? I mean, cutting it down to 30 minutes a day from the hours a day he's probably currently getting. Have you tried cutting down your own screen time and using that time to interact with your child, play games with him, give him something enjoyable and wholesome and constructive to focus on? Did you try changing his diet? Did you try getting all the processed sugary junk out of your house completely? Did you try finding him some kind of sport or outdoor activity that allows him to burn off energy and develop useful skills? Did you try mandatory 45-minute reading time at night before bed where all screens are turned off and he sits and reads, or you read to him and you kind of unwind and you get that experience of reading? Did you try harsher punishments for misbehavior? Did you try introducing serious consequences for serious misbehavior? Did you try all of that? Now, I know that you'll probably say that you did, but you didn't. I know that you didn't. And if you have a kid in elementary school on ADHD drugs, I'm flat out telling you, you did not try all these things. I know that you didn't try them, because trying them means implementing these strategies and sticking with them for years. It means giving these seeds time to grow fruit. It means giving your child time, a lot of time. He needs a lot of time. You cannot possibly be at your last resort when he's 7. You haven't given any of these strategies even close to the amount of time they need. In other words, you actually haven't tried anything. You've tried nothing. Medication is not your last resort, it's your first. He's 7. There is no last here. What is the last? His existence just began 7 years ago. You haven't given him any time. You haven't given him any chance to grow and mature. You tried these methods to help your son, but you abandoned them way before they could have possibly shown results. So give your child time. He needs time. You tried everything, but the one thing you didn't try was time. So it's like saying that you tried everything to make a perfect loaf of bread, except leaving it in the oven for more than 2 minutes. You know, you've employed every bread-making strategy you possibly could think of, so long as it would take less than 2 minutes. Well, in that case, you haven't actually tried to make bread, because, sorry, bread takes time. Children take a lot more time. That's the job of parenting. It requires sustained, consistent effort for years and years and years. That's the gig, right? It's what we signed up for. And this is a very important point that I actually think about a lot, because this false urgency, this need to fix our kids in 30 seconds or less, is what Big Pharma preys upon. I mean, they've made billions on this. It's the same sense of panic and need for quick fixes that led many parents to put their children on chemical castration drugs as a way of fixing what would have otherwise been a very temporary confusion about their gender. most of the worst decisions parents make, the most unintentionally destructive ones, are made in the name of fixing a child quickly. They are motivated by a false sense of urgency, by this hallucinatory idea that a child's most challenging behaviors must be changed right away, or else some unspecified terrible thing will happen. They're made because the parent doesn't want to, or has been convinced that they shouldn't, give it time. Here's the thing about kids. And if I could get parents to understand one thing, it might be this. Nothing is permanent. Everything changes. And they go through phases. And those phases can be intense. They could last for 6 days or 6 years. But either way, they won't last forever. So just to give you one example of the dozens and dozens that I could supply from my own life and my family, my oldest daughter struggled to read, hated reading for many years. From the age of like about 4, right around the time when you first start reading, to right around 11. Getting her to read was like pulling teeth. And she had a very hard time with it for a long time. She was, for a long time, way behind her peers. And yes, as parents, we worried about it. For all this stuff that I'm saying about, give it time, it's not easy to do. I understand that. And so as a parent, we're worried and we're fretting. And we can't help but imagine a dark future where our daughter is 25 years old and can barely read. Well, then one day it changed. And now at 11 and a half, we can't get her to stop reading. I mean, she reads like 2 whole chapter books a week. I'm talking books that are 300 pages. She's just burning through them. She reads morning, afternoon, and night. I catch her in a room with a flashlight 2 hours after bedtime, still reading. And then she wakes up and starts reading again. The other day, I actually had to tell her to stop reading and come watch TV. Okay, I wanted to watch just about an hour of TV as a family. We don't watch a lot of TV, but I wanted to do that, and she wanted to stay in her room and read. I had to say words that perhaps no parent has ever uttered to a child before. Put the book down and come watch TV. Because she's a reading addict. It's amazing. I love it. It's incredible. The point is that kids change, and her change seems sudden and out of nowhere. And it was sudden, but it wasn't out of nowhere. We worked with her for years and years and years, every day for years. And it's just that we saw little progress visibly. And then we saw a gigantic Grand Canyon leap of progress all at once. That's the way it is with kids, in my experience. But you have to give them time. Before you start messing with their brains and drugging them and medicating them and medicalizing them, give them time. Lead them in the right direction. Take them by the hand and pull them along if you have to, which most of the time you will. But give them time. And this is especially important, I believe, for boys. If you think that your son has a deficit of attention, if you think that he's incapable of focusing on or paying attention to anything, my question is this: how many things have you tried? Are you sure that he has some sort of neurological inability to focus? Or do you mean that he very specifically finds it difficult to focus in school? Is he able to pay attention for long periods of time to anything else? If there's something he can focus on and pay attention to, but he struggles to pay attention in school, the problem is obviously not a physical inability to pay attention. The problem is that he's bored in school. If you are drugging him in that case, the disease you're drugging and treating is boredom. You are drugging your son because he's bored. Bored by something that is, in fact, very boring. And if that sounds pretty awful, it's because, I'm sorry, it is pretty awful. Now, you might say that, well, there really isn't anything that my son can focus on. But again, I ask you, how many things have you tried? Another personal example. Both my 11-year-old son and my 8-year-old son have recently discovered a passion for archery. Okay? And they picked this up on their own. Archery is not my thing. I think I've shot a bow and arrow like twice in my life. But they discovered this passion for it. And so I took them to the archery range over the weekend, and I watched them practice for an hour. And focusing, just one, taking the arrow out of the quiver, one after another. My son's hitting bullseye shots from 60 feet out with a bow and arrow. I mean, and both of them are very, very high energy and rambunctious. Both of them could easily be diagnosed ADHD if we went seeking that diagnosis, which we haven't and won't. Yet they practice archery every day now, a sport that requires intense focus and concentration and discipline. And if they stick with it over time, they'll become more disciplined and focused in every area of their lives. I've already noticed some of those improvements just from the relatively short time that they've been involved in the sport. And why is that? Well, because discipline and focus are skills. You have to hone them. Okay, focusing on something focusing especially on something that you consider boring is a skill. You need to give your boy an outlet to hone the skill. And if you want him to be more focused, help him develop the skill. Have you done that? If you're telling me, oh, he can't focus on anything, have you helped him develop the skill of focus? Have you tried finding him an outlet for that purpose? Find him something he loves that requires focus. And he'll do it because he loves it. And in the process, as a byproduct, he will learn how to focus generally, and he'll start being able to apply that even to areas of life that he doesn't love as much. If you put him on drugs in elementary school, you didn't try. You didn't give him a chance. You went for the quick fix instead. You didn't give him time. And he needs and deserves time. Now, this way is harder for a parent. I understand that. I know that from experience. I'm not recommending any course of action that I have not taken and am not currently living through at this very moment. I understand the challenges of raising children without resorting to drugs as a shortcut. I understand the challenges more than almost every person who's ever accused me of not understanding them. 4 boys, 2 girls, 2 sets of twins, I get it. Drugging your child into submission is easier. Working with them, being patient, giving them a chance to grow and mature naturally is difficult, but you owe it to your child to do the difficult thing. Neither of you will regret it in the long run. Very few parents look back on their child's life and regret not dosing them with psychotropic drugs in elementary school. Many regret having done so, and many adults regret that it was done to them. Avoid the regret. Give your child time. There's no long-term downside to this. Don't listen to anyone who tells you otherwise. The other day, someone tweeted at me with an objection I've heard a million times. He said, dude, you must not have kids. Let them just grow and mature means in a lot of cases letting them fail out of school early with not much of a future. Something has to be done so that they can at least learn basic stuff like reading. I'm not saying meds is the best answer, but it's a precarious situation. Now, first of all, of course, this is why it's best to glance at Wikipedia quickly before you accuse someone of not having kids. Second, this is the kind of totally delusional fear parents have. And I get it, but it is delusional. Your kid is not going to fail out of school. Listen to me. It is literally impossible for him to fail out of school. Even if he tried to, they won't let him. If your son decided his mission in life was to fail out of school, he wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, they say you can achieve your dreams. That's one dream you can't achieve. The school system won't let it happen. And he's especially not going to fail out of elementary school. What the hell 3rd grader have you heard of in modern times that's failed out of school? Now, what might happen is that as you give him time to grow and you work with him slowly, that he might get mediocre grades in elementary school or even bad grades. Do you know what will happen to your child in the long run if he gets mediocre or bad grades in elementary school? Literally nothing. Not a single thing. There is not a single adult walking the earth today whose life is at all hampered by the poor report card they got in 3rd grade. Now, I'm not saying that bad grades are okay or that you should just accept them. I am saying that they are not the kind of thing you need to chemically alter your child's brain just to avoid. Just work with them and give them time. Okay? All good things take time. Raising children to be virtuous, smart, high-functioning people in this world is one of the best things a person can do, and so it takes the most time. And that is why parents who reach for the quick fixes rather than doing the hard work of actually parenting are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
John Bickley here, Daily Wire Editor-in-Chief. Wake up every morning with our show, Morning Wire, where we bring you all the news that you need to know in 15 minutes or less. Join me and my co-host Georgia Howe for daily coverage of all the biggest stories on Morning Wire.